Casing the Cover is a bi-monthly podcast series hosted by Mary and Jenn. That's me. In our day-to-day experiences, Mary and I happen across numerous crappy covers, atrocious authors, and sad, sad titles. We spend a healthy amount of time decoding how cover designs can be humorously contrary to the story within or used to lure readers based on demographic or current trends. Should you judge a book by the cover? Join Mary and Jenn on the case to find out.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Casing the Cover, the book podcast where one of us reads and the other one does her nails. I am Mary, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Jen. Hi, Jen.
Hello. Did you hear me this time?
A little bit. The zooming leaves much to be desired. Your mic does not like you to even slightly go high pitched.
I know, and as I was just regaling to you that I am doing this songwriting challenge thing this month, and for some reason it doesn't mind my awful squeaky voice in that. I do wish I could edit my voice.
I don't know that maybe it's not your mic. Maybe it's just maybe Zoom decides that you're too loud and cuts you off.
Zoom has decided I am too loud.
Maybe. I don't really know. Zoom. I use it, but I don't understand it.
It's the black magic of Zoom. Because we don't understand it. Much like the black magic that I will talk about in the book that I'm covering today.
Nice transition, Jen.
I segued that really nice, didn't I?
We are still working through Jen's backlog. I think we're catching up.
Sure, we'll say you're catching up with my backlog.
Catching up with the ones you wanted to talk about here anyway.
Yes, there are quite a few that I probably will never talk about on the podcast just because they were good, but they didn't really have a whole lot to offer. And also, their covers weren't something spectacularly amazing that I had to be like, oh, I must talk about this book cover. The one that I want to talk about today is The Grace Year.
Which you have been alluding to, for months.
Because I loved it and hated it and was torn apart by it. And it was exactly what I needed at the time so let's start with the cover itself. The cover is kind of a pastel, pale pink cover, and it says Grace Year in pretty bold sans serif block lettering.
I'm pulling it up so I have it here too.
Okay, yeah, because it's very hard for me to show you on this. And it's a profile of a girl's head bust, I guess we shall say. Not bust like breast, bust like the statuary. And it's in profile, and her hair is braided, and the braid has a red ribbon woven through it.
Mm-hmm.
But the longer you look at this, the more, I don't know, do you have it in front of you?
Yeah, the ribbon is blood.
The ribbon is blood.
The end of the ribbon turns into a trail of blood.
Yes. And so there's so many layers. And also there's this sort of faded tracing of a flower. It's really hard to see in pictures.
It's it's this white, it's this really pastel-y pink background with then this white overlaid flower on it. So it's hard to see because the outline of the flower is barely a different color than the background.
Yes.
Because the background is light, smoky pink, and it's not a very different color.
Right. And there is a different cover for this.
Okay. Is it the hand one?
Yes. And it looks like it's in German or something.
Well, I see the Grace Year gray hand, and it looks like it's spray painted. Holding a red flower that also looks spray painted, and the title looks spray painted. Is that the one you're talking about?
Oh, there's a third one then.
This one doesn't look like it's a different language. This one looks like it's in English.
Yeah, this one has got so the top part says the resistance starts here.
Yeah, and the flower is bleeding instead of her ribbon.
Yes, and then the one that's in German also says the resistance starts here, but it's written in German. And the flower
I see that one too. It looks similar.
And it's a little red flower. It's less rose-like or lily-like than the others are.
Yeah. Well, this one, the German one, also there's no bleeding. It's just a flower.
Yeah. So, okay, layers upon layers of magnificence in this cover.
Which one?
Kind of all of them, but mostly the original one that I found when I was looking through it. So I thought, okay, this is either going to be like, because it's teen. Preface. This is a teen novel.
I think the hand is the ebook cover, and the face is the cover of the book.
Yeah. So much yikes that this is a teen book, but I understand because teens are all about the dystopian future thing.
Yeah, teen books actually get really dark and like angsty and violent, and there's a lot in teen fiction.
Yes. And I was a little like, I thought, oh, I'm gonna read a fluffy teen gothic romance kind of thing.
You don't read a lot of YA, do you, Jen?
I don't, and I feel like I should read more because one of the other ones that I read was a Libba Bray book, and she's just crazy.
So I finally found a genre I read more of than you.
Yes. And so oh my gosh, there's so many things I want to talk about. I'm like bouncing all over the place with this book. All right, let's start with Kim Liggett, who I hope I pronounced that right. Liggetti.
That sounds right.
Sorry, no I at the end. Anyway, this book apparently won her some awards, one of which being the Bram Stoker Award.
Okay.
So yeah, it's dark and jacked up, and what the hell? The idea of blood and bleeding and the red ribbon thing is all female-centric stuff. So obviously, these are girls who are coming of age. When they come of age, they have to go to this camp because they have dark magic and they have to be purged of their dark magic. And so they're sent off to this camp, and most of them kind of don't come back because I don't want to give away the book because this is another one that I'm like, please read this because it's freaking fantastic. It will shred you, but it's really good.
You want me to read this book that's gonna hurt me? That's
yes. But it'll hurt you in a good way. I don't know. It gutted me, and it was so wonderful and awful at the same time. So the girls in the village have to wear their hair braided all the time because, if their hair is out and wild, that's bad magic too. So they have this red ribbon that they have to keep in their hair. And when they get to this camp, they can take their red ribbon out because they are also kind of technically free from the confines of their village. And then there's like this whole tribe of people who are like hunting them, and that's why they have to stay inside the camp. And there is always this kind of, I don't know, overarching concern about black magic, that these girls have dark magic. And I don't want to give too much away, but it is more dystopian than fantasy. So the magic may or may not be what they think it is.
The magic is a lie from the government to keep them in line, kind of a thing.
Okay, yeah, the magic's a lie from the government to keep them in line.
Yeah, that this is a dystopian YA. I'm not surprised.
So there's obviously way more girls than boys in this village, so they're eliminating the girls. And they end up kind of eliminating themselves. So this is Handmaid's Tale with Lord of the Flies with Shyamalan's The Village. Just smash them all together and you get the Gracier.
That sounds about right for YA.
And yet, you would think that if they took those three things and put them together, it would be like, what am I reading? This is awful. But it's not. I am so invested in these characters. And I think because it does lean very heavy on the Lord of the Flies feel of like people, the strong preying on the weak. And and these are people that you trusted and you should trust, and why are they acting like this? And and there's the one girl who is logical about everything, and that's obviously not going to work out, so there's the power hungry people and all of this. So all the while, there is also the whole thing is they talk to each other. There's sort of a language of flowers, which I don't know how much you know about mythology and folklore and flowers, but there really is like a language of flowers.
Probably not as much as you do. That seems more like something in your wheelhouse than mine.
Yes, it's very much in my wheelhouse. But yeah, so like obviously with roses especially. So like red roses mean romantic love.
Right. Yellow is friendship. I know some of it.
Yeah, okay. So basically the same thing, only this does go across the board with like all types of flowers. So like chrysanthemums, I think, are like maternity kind of things, or maternal love, and poppies are good luck. I don't remember. It's a lot. I look it up if I need to. Just to make sure I don't send something to somebody that's like, that said, read between the lines.
This is just making me, there's one of my favorite, okay, total sidetrack. One of my favorite guilty pleasure movies of all time is Kate and Leopold. Have you ever seen that movie?
I have never seen that
movie. It's like a naughties comedy. It's not a rom-com, I guess, with Hugh Jackman and Meg Ryan, in which Hugh Jackman is like a Victorian era Duke who time travels to the future and falls in love with Meg Ryan. It's very silly, but I love it so much because Hugh Jackman is a babe and he's so handsome and beautiful and wonderful, and he's, royalty. It's the fantasy thing.
Okay.
But he goes with a random, modern man who doesn't understand what flowers mean to a florist to get flowers for the guys, he wants to hook up with girl. And he just pulls like a random assortment of flowers off the shelf. And Hugh Jackman's like, dude, you're telling her that you detest her and that she vexed, like, is just telling him what the flowers all mean. And then he has to like help him pick a bouquet. That's all I remember when you talk about like language of flowers. It's just Hugh Jackman looking very dandy picking up flowers.
Because yes, there is a whole language of flowers. And see, I know you said that it's in my wheelhouse because it's some new age woo-woo thing, but
say
really,
that.
But that's what you meant.
No, because you're more historically inclined than I am, and you're more into mythology and into cultural stuff, and it just seems like something that is one of those like nuggets of information that lives in your brain, whereas stuff that lives in my brain is like, this random piece of movie trivia from some movie that no one has seen except me. It just fits in your brain better than it does mine, that's all.
Yeah. That's the square peg round hole situations with us. Like, you have all the squares and I have all the rounds, and I will give you my squares and I will take the rounds. It'll be fine. I'm pretty sure I said that backwards. But anyway. So yes, the language of flowers is super important in this. There's a lot of nuance in like knowing what people are saying with the flowers, which, I mean, if you don't know the language of flowers, she pretty much lays it out for you on how things work. But I like that the flower on the cover is sort of just in the background. It's sort of like, and it's a line flower. So it's between the lines. Like, the message is between the lines. Maybe I am reading way more into this cover than I should be.
Yeah, it's hard to tell what flower it even is. I mean, it kind of looks like a couple different flowers on it.
Yeah, it's kind of a lily, kind of a, I don't know.
One looks like a profile of like the side profile of a rose. One looks like a lily. One looks like it's not open, so you can't tell what it is.
Yeah. And then, which, again, there's all these different flowers that have this conversation that go throughout the book. The biggest thing that I absolutely loved about this is how, like, it's also kind of a mystery. in that it tells you kind of everything that's been going on. If you pay attention to the flowers, if you pay attention to what the characters are doing. I actually went through this book, read it to the end, and then went, wait a minute, what just happened? And even the pieces that I thought I was like putting together, I didn't have the whole picture. And I'm the kind of person who's like, 5 minutes to 12 minutes into a movie, I can tell you how it ends. I read most books and I can say, oh, well, I know where this is going, but I'm enjoying the ride, so I'll keep going. This thing had me so confused, but not in a bad writing sort of way, if that makes sense.
You couldn't figure it out. It was ahead of you.
Yeah, it was ahead of me. And I think it did that really well without that being the purpose of it. Like the purpose was the purpose is it's a coming of age story. It's a really jacked up coming of age story, but that's what it is. And like kind of all the trials and tribulations and how do you, escape your past, escape an abuse cycle, all of these kinds of things, but it's also a mystery. And in that mystery, you kind of also learn about how she may have been completely oblivious to how much help she's always had. So like, even though she was in a bad situation in this village, she wasn't as bad as what other people were, which is what kind of paved the way for her to become what she becomes. And I'm giving away way more than this. So stop here, go read the book, and come back and listen. Because I'm going to spoil the whole book. It's just going to happen. I can't help it because it blew my mind that much. But like so yes, this is spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. I've said it enough times. I think it's safe.
I don't care if you spoil.
They have to go to this camp. And the well is poisoned in this camp. And it's like hallucinogenically poisoned. So like whatever mushrooms are growing in there. So of course they think that their magic is happening because they're high as kites. So they have no idea that the more they drink this water, the more they're getting like agitated with each other and they think that the sky is moving. It's like some tripping balls, LSD, mushrooms kind of thing going on. And she tries to tell them this, but they exile her. And that's basically what saves her, is that she is exiled. She's at the top of this ridge and like the earth kind of crumbles away. And she discovers this body that has a red ribbon still in its, like, kind of half a red ribbon clutched to it or something. And this goes all the way back to there's this one guy who has been so nice to her in the village, and he's so sad because he had proposed to this girl several years ago and she never came back. And she's like, oh my gosh, this is the girl who never came back. It has to be. And like, they killed her and this is awful. And when I get back, I have to tell him. That is not what happened. Like,
did he murder her?
He murdered her. It's totally so screwed up. And then like the people who they're surrounded, they're walled into, well, fenced in, I guess, into this camp. And on the outside of the camp, there's these hunters who are this other tribe of people who come and basically cull the herd of these girls, which the girls are safe inside this camp. They have plenty of food, they have plenty of water, they have all this stuff. But because they're basically they don't trust each other because they're all high and think that they shouldn't trust each other, and all this stuff is happening. This is the Lord of the Flies part.
Yeah.
So they start kicking each other out to these murderers.
So is the point of the camp that everyone gets high and then they all turn on each other and they kill each other off and then whoever's left goes back?
Yes. And then they just don't talk about it in the village because they've been so like conditioned to be like, well, that was just our magic. So now we never speak of this again.
In the grand scheme of dystopian government, like control plans, this is the one thing I don't really like about dystopian teen fiction. Because when you look at like dystopian adult fiction, it's always like everyone's drugged into submission and the government just comes through and just shoots people. And, you know, like if you look your 1984s and your Brave New Worlds and all that. Whereas in like YA fiction, they still go with like the chosen one narrative, even though it's not fantasy, it's sci-fi. Yeah. So there's like these really convoluted reasons for why things are happening. Like, did you ever read The Hunger Games? Have you seen The Hunger Games?
I have neither seen nor read The Hunger Games. I started reading it, and I gotta confess, I didn't like her writing style.
Fair thing is, like, the character of Katniss is kind of, a lot of people criticized it in the movies too. They're like, oh, she's, as a heroine, she's really boring to watch. But this is a character whose trauma basically has made them kind of shut down. So she's kind of not the easiest protagonist to like relate to, but like the convoluted, oh, there was a war and the government retaliated by they pull a person from every district and there's districts and each district only does one thing. And then, you know, these people are over here and then this people's over there. And it, like the premises of these dystopian teen novels are a little convoluted. The other really, really bad one is, I like The Hunger Games. I'm not like downing it, but the Divergent books where they all get into organized into Hogwarts houses, but on a societal level, and like because some of them have more than one personality type and that's bad, and so those people have to hide. I just sometimes teen fiction gets a little convoluted, and so like in the grand scheme of things, if you have too many women and versus how many men in yours village, wouldn't it make sense when they all go to the camp to just, you know, actually poison a few of them and send the rest home?
Right. Yes. But apparently it's also a means, this goes into the Handmaid's Tale part of it, which is because they like basically tortured each other, there's this weird sort of like pack bonding that happens. And they know like at any moment, one of them could rise up and murder the other one. Like they've seen them kill each other. So they're like, gee, maybe I should be good because gossip in this small town might actually cause you to die. Which does happen. They do have also like witch burnings and things like that happen in the town. Okay. So there's a lot of control that happens with this. And I can actually see how this works because it also creates a natural pecking order for the women in the village, because they're not gonna, if they all hate each other, they're not gonna rise up against the men. They're gonna pick on each other.
Right, they're too busy worrying about each other.
So it makes sense. Like I can actually see from a societal control perspective, this could work, you know? And then you have the hunters, who everybody thinks are like some kind of cannibals or something like that. They are hired by the men of the village to kill the girls. And the men know full well about these people.
So why are they killing the girls?
Because again, if they get shoved out of the camp, they then, you know, they just call the herd. It's one more way to call the herd.
Saying their culling is taking too many steps. That's my only concern is like you're culling in the most convoluted way possible. It's like, first we're going to put all the chickens in one coop and we're not going to give them enough food. So they're going to peck each other and then they're going to kick each other out of the coop. And then we're going to send some foxes after them too. And then foxes don't get them. Then they're going to go over here and there's an alligator in the moat. And if the moat drains and the alligator doesn't live, then we're going to send some wildebeest to trample them. I'm like, you could just twist the chicken's neck and then you'd have less chickens.
Yeah, and I kind of get that, but the reason why the girls all stay inside this fenced in area and don't try to run home is because of the fear of being attacked.
Mm.
So I get it. You basically built a barbed wire fence with guards and put them all in there until they try to kill each other. And at the end of the year, they can come back.
And then what happens to the girls who come back? They just exist in the society.
They're married off. If they were not, this is the other thing that I think is totally jacked up. They have the girls be like proposed to before they leave on this thing. And obviously there's a limited number of proposals available. So these girls come back, and if the ones that were proposed to don't come back, the boys have to wait like another year to propose to another girl. And I'm like, wait, what the heck is going on? So that was a little weird for me. But I think maybe what it did do is create kind of that bitterness and pettiness too, of like, well, gee, that boy who I liked proposed to you instead of me. So now I'm going to kill you because of it. So the way I look at these kinds of things with respect to Lord of the Flies, we'll just go back with this. It's really about like shaking off your juvenile energy. Like, you think about it, teenagers are naturally moody and bitchy and hate each other and jealous over every petty little thing. It's high school with weapons. So yeah, it's high school but with weapons. When you have Lord of the Flies, it was basically they established a pecking order right away, and bullying was taken to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
With this as well, bullying is taken to the next level. You know it happens. We know that teenagers bully each other. We know that they establish cliques and like will the strongest survive through high school kind of thing. This just kind of ups the ante on it. So that's why, like you mentioned earlier, how like in adult dystopian, the government comes down on the people.
Mm-hmm.
In teen dystopian, it's the government is using your behaviors to control you.
Yes.
So adjust your behaviors, catch wise to how the adults are treating you, and you will overcome.
Yeah, but then, I mean, you keep using the example of Lord of the Flies. Lord of the Flies, the point is that these are children who are all left to their own devices with no interference and no one to tell them what to do, and that's what makes them turn on each other. Not, oh, well, there's too much interference and we're poisoning the water and we're playing these games, and like, you know, there's not as much, I guess, psychological like manipulation of it. It's just what happens when you put a bunch of kids to their own devices in the middle of nowhere. Well, they go a little savage. This, like, well, these women need a lot of help to go savage.
Now you've got it. Boys don't need a lot of help to go savage.
Yeah, I guess.
I just lost half our listener base. But anyway.
But that's also true. I don't think that's untrue.
I don't really think it's untrue. And again, the gentlemen in the audience, all the apologies, but let's be real.
Well, it's also societal, like, society-wise, the way that men are often raised versus the way that women are raised. Women are raised to be more manipulative to get what they want, whereas men are told, oh, just go punch it out.
Yeah. And that's the thing. You have to create these hoops for the, as you said, the hens to jump through, and when they can't get through that, they blame each other instead of blaming the system. All right, and now back to the flowers.
Okay.
So I love that it is a red flower on the other covers. Because while the white flower kind of hidden in the background is that, hey, let's read between the lines on what people are saying energy, the red flower is actually a symbol that's used in the book. That little red flower shows up like in all these weird ways for the main character. And you kind of start to wonder if it showed up in all these weird ways for all of the girls, and just we only ever saw it through the eyes of the main character, and she seems to think that she's the only one that's not like sucked into this whole thing. But it's
the
possible
hallucinogens.
that like they see this red flower in the village, and she sees this red flower as they're walking into the camp, and it's just one, and she sees the one red flower as they're exiting the camp. So like obviously everybody else walked the same paths that you do. Everybody else lived in the same village you do. Why do you think you're the only one that saw this flower? And what the flower is it is basically a sign of the resistance. And all of the women keep this flower like underneath their clothing. Every generation is starting to catch wise to what the men are doing. And they are finding ways to, again, manipulate their surroundings and their government, but they're still very quiet about it, and they have to find subtle ways, and they have to know, like, is it safe to talk to this woman? Is it safe to talk to that one? Or is she no longer part of our little club kind of thing? So, and I say all the women, but like there's like a selection of women in the village that have this little red flower, and like it just keeps popping up. So I like that it's a red flower on the cover.
It's on the alternate cover.
Yes, it's on the alternate cover. Which now I'm not sure which cover I like better, because I like the pink cover because it is so pink. It is so, this is a girly situation. And yet so delicate and, you know, grace year. You think looking at it like, oh, this is going to be, like I said, I thought it was going to be a gothic romance kind of thing. It was not that.
So this was published 2019. So that's actually fairly recent.
It is.
Which is actually kind of surprising because, I mean, I feel like we're a few years past the height of dystopian fiction in YA. I mean, it's always going to be a feature of YA because this, especially the kind of dystopian that ends up in YA, is very emotionally motivated. It's very tense. And that's the thing about YA is most YA is emotionally motivated because that's what teenagers are dealing with. You know, they're dealing with, we're growing up and emotions suck. So fantasy YA, dystopian YA, kids have cancer YA, all of it is very emotionally motivated. But that being so, it's always going to be a thing in YA. That being said, you know, we kind of hit the YA, like the surge of YA, the big surge was of course when the Hunger Games were big. It was what, mid 2010s, early 2010s. I think Hunger Games probably came out like 2009.
I'm the wrong one to ask about that.
I'm gonna look it up but like so this book has 2012 when the movie came out. So I think the books came out slightly before that. Let me see. Here's the book. When was it published? First book, Hunger Games, 2008. So I was slightly off. I know my YAs.
That's a good guess.
Yeah. And the movies were like mid 2010s about. But the braid in the hair is very Katniss. It is. And so like part of me looking at this, and you said they wear their hair in braids in the book, which makes more sense. But my first instinct seeing this, oh, it's a dystopian novel, she's got a braid in her hair and it's really blood. That made me wonder if this was, well, they put a braid on the cover because it's dystopian YA and kids will connect the dystopian YA to the big dystopian YA, which is Hunger Games.
Yeah, but it really, okay, so I know you're saying that like it was kind of, it's at the end of the curve.
Well, it kind of is past, it's well past the curve. I think it's maybe might get lumped into a future curve if YA comes back, but YA pretty much died out probably around 2017, 2016.
With the dystopian.
The dystopian YA, kind of the peak of it died out. That's about when Hunger Games finished up. The and I mean, like, again, in books is different than movies, but like the peak of when it was super popular and all the companies, both film and publishing companies, were snatching up every YA they get their hands on. Peak of that was probably mid 2010s, because that's when Hunger Games was petering out and they were like, what can we replace it with?
Yeah.
And that's when you got your Divergence and your Maze Runners and your Wave 5s and your I Am Number 4s, of which only one of those made any money, and they didn't make a last movie because they didn't make enough money. So I think that's kind of when those started to peter out. And this kind of came after that wave.
And I think that is why it doesn't look anything like those.
No,
it really looks more like a teen romance novel.
Not really, no, it doesn't. Because I feel like
it's not futuristic, does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. But I also feel like YA romance, especially like the cutesy romances, go for kind of like almost like a lot of I'm trying to think of like the genre in adult fiction. A lot of them go for that kind of like cartoonish cover art, where like you have kind of like drawn, they don't look like real people, they look like a cartoon. I'm trying to think of like a good example of this, but I feel like that's where more YA romance and like rom-com-y kind of stuff goes more to like that cutesy like drawn cover kind of a thing.
I guess for me, looking at this cover did not give me that energy of typical dystopian teen novel.
Yeah, that's fair.
Maybe that is because they recognize that, hey, this is not a thing we need to bandwagon onto anymore. We don't need to look like Divergent. We don't need to look like Hunger Games with the bold, like not bright bold colors, but the bolder, heavier colors, heavier hue saturation, if you will, with it, and bigger, bolder lettering. This is more, it feels like a book for girls, but like rise up kind of book for girls.
But it also, I feel like it's kind of like a girlier interpretation of a dystopian cover.
Yes.
But it still has those elements of a dystopian cover to me.
Yeah, I do think it also kind of has that gothic thing. And again, I was reading this right when I was still writing the gothic horror novel that I was working on. So yes, I was looking for books to inspire me and push me along to write my gothic horror novel. So I picked this up thinking, hey, this looks like gothic horror, and it has a flower on it. Oh, what just happened?
I'm sharing things with you.
Okay.
So go ahead, finish what you're saying, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. But finish what you're saying.
So yes, totally putting me off. The flower, the girl with the braided hair or updo hair, I guess, all felt very gothic to me rather than dystopian. I was not expecting dystopian, but at the same time, it feels very the selection ones.
Those are also dystopian. Continue.
Oh my gosh. Okay, no, I'm totally, now I'm watching you're doing.
I'm distracting you with pictures. So I only want to make a point, which is those are all movie covers. I don't want you to look at those. I guess my point is the design of it is kind of this more simplistic of Gracier. This simplistic background, the very like that's what I'm looking for. Like the very like standout image on it that's got that hint. It's pretty, but there's also a hint of darkness to it. Like that for me holds a lot of similarities to something like that's more of a typical, like if I had looked at it, I would have guessed it was a dystopian before I guessed it was a rom. Like if I looked at that without having you told me anything, based on the fact that I have read too many dystopian YA novels, I would have guessed it was a dystopian YA over anything else you just told, like over a gothic or over a horror, because all the horror stuff in YA has like creepy women on it and pretty dresses.
Yes, and she's just not having the dress. Okay, I'm gonna say Divergent and Hunger Games is very masculine looking.
Yes, but that's what I'm saying. I think that the Gracier looks like a prettier version of that similar style of kind of background with standout image on it. And I pulled the selection, which is in and of itself pretty dystopian.
Is it?
Yes, these are dystopian, sort of. They're so the selection series, they look more like fantasy novels because they have these very pretty blingy dresses on the front. But they're kind of like in a world where The Bachelor is the Hunger Games. They're like in this post-apocalyptic kind of, the world is kind of barely put back together, and now there's a royal class and a caste system, and one girl from each district, not really, but gets to kind of compete in a giant Bachelor tournament to try to become the queen.
Okay, see, this and Gracier I would put in the same category. So that's dystopian for girls.
Yeah, dystopian for girls. All of YA is for girls. But then here's Uglies, which is also like dystopian for girls.
I have never seen this one.
You never heard of Uglies? I've never read Uglies, but it's like these all kind of feel more like Gracier. I feel fits these better than, now I'm going to show you your rom-com-y YA books.
Oh, in no way did I think it was going to be rom-com. I thought it was going to be gothic,
like
romance.
Gothic. Yeah, I don't really know how big of a movement that is in YA, and it might just because I don't really read that kind of YA.
I feel like the gothic romance stuff is tied into the retold fairy tales.
Yeah, but those lean way more fantasy. Like I said, pretty flowy dresses, kind of more like selection looks like it fits that more than it fits like dystopian. But like you look what's big in like YA romance right now. Look at Rainbow Rowell. Look at, it was Simon versus the Homo Sapiens was the book I was trying to think of. They go more for that kind of animated, drawn, kind of
high contrast.
Yes, very bright, very pretty. This cover doesn't fit those for me.
No, but the other version kind of
does. Yeah,
it's got that high contrast to it. But yeah, I feel like the cover of this book draws in exactly the type of person who needs to read this book. Like, if a girl comes in and is totally drawn to the pretty pink cover, she needs her pretty pink cover shook a bit. I'm like, I'm about to introduce you to the real world, my dear, is kind of how I feel about this book cover. It lies a little bit, but to lure you in, if that makes sense.
I don't know. I think I think it's a little more straightforward. I think the thing is the sinister like elements of that cover are pretty prominent.
Yeah, if you look at it long enough.
Yeah.
At a glance, it's a pretty girl on a pretty pink cover.
But the type is over her face. So you can't actually see her pretty. And her ribbon is bloody, and the type is also kind of messed up. And there are like elements to it that tell me this is not a pretty girl cover.
Right. There's something lurking beneath the surface. But I like it better than the Vive la Revolution.
Yeah, I don't like that cover.
Lack of better terminology for the other cover, even though it tells the story a bit straighter. Like, here's the red flower, and this is what it's all about, is these girls and this red flower. And
it's not as interesting of a cover.
It's not, because again, the type of girl who's going to pick up that cover is already started a revolution or two. Let's be honest. If she's already picking up books that are like, this looks like a revolution, I'm going to start another revolution, or I want to start a revolution. Whereas if you pick up the Gracier, you're kind of going, I really wish I had the wherewithal to start a revolution. How would I do that? You know what I mean? It's much more subtle.
Here's something you and I might need to do a little research on.
I like research.
Well, then maybe I'll set you on this. I wonder when a publishing company publishes a book and picks a cover, if there's some sort of thing about it, or their deal with the cover artist or something that determines whether or not that cover can be used on anything besides the print copy of the book. Because I wonder why so many books have different covers for their audio or ebook version.
Yes.
And you notice the cover for the audio and or ebook almost is always a more simplistic cover. And I almost wonder if it's because they put money into designing something eye-catching for a physical book that they don't feel like they need if you're going to buy an ebook, because you're not picking it up and looking at the cover, you're looking at the description, you're looking at the keywords because of the way you shop. And I wonder if they go, we don't need to put as much research and time and energy into designing something that's just going to go as a thumbnail on a web page and isn't going to be a thing you hold in your hand and look at.
Well, and also the thing that you hold in your hand and look at, you can really look at and kind of feel it. Whereas an image on a screen, it kind of has to be bolder and blockier to grasp it quickly. Like if I'm flipping through on my screen, I would flip right past the Gracier. It's pink. It's got a girl on the cover, and we gone.
Right.
I wouldn't get the blood on the ribbon. I wouldn't get the blocky letters. I wouldn't get the flower. Honestly, I would not get that at all. But if you have a monochromatic cover with a bright red flower on it, you have made a statement, and your eye is caught in an instant.
Monochromatic cover with a bright red flower on it. I wonder where they got that idea. It all comes back to Twilight, Jen.
Oh no! No. It does not all come back to Twilight. What have we done? Oh, I don't like that. You were so subtle with that. I did not even get it until you said it.
Circle of life.
Damn you.
But I do wonder if that's why. You're right. It is because you're flipping. You need something that's more like immediately recognizable as standing out. Maybe that is why you get such different covers between audiobook and ebook versus physical copy. We need to pay more attention to that when we do these books.
Yeah. I mean, I usually go looking for both of them just to see if there's a difference, but some have been like crazy. I'm going to go all the way back to our very first episode with this Fat Bob Dead Yet, and the completely different covers on that.
Whereas The Chemist didn't have different covers. I wonder if it probably has a lot to do with like what publisher it's coming through, if they can afford to make different covers for two different versions of the book. And B, if it's a book that has a fan base of people who are going to go read it anyway. These mystery books, the romance that have 1,000 books by the same author, you're just going to read the whole series, Patterson novels, Stephanie Meyer, big authors. If they don't bother putting the time into creating an extra cover because the fan base is already there.
Yeah.
Versus something like this where you're trying to catch people's attention. And so you're going two different ways about it when you're looking at a physical cover versus an e-cover.
Yeah, and well, like I said, with this one, she won awards for this one. So maybe it had to do with like pre-award, post-award, almost the same thing as like pre-movie, post-movie.
But that the pre-movie, post-movie thing, the thing is, I don't think awards drive up sales necessarily, because it's kind of like Oscars. You're not as into movies as I am. But the thing is, when you go to the Oscars, when you do like Oscar polls and stuff, the general public has maybe seen one Oscar contender. The people who pick things to be awarded are not the same as people who go spend money on movies. I think the same is probably true for books. The people who pick books that are award contenders are not the same as people who go buy a book in a bookstore.
Although I will say that knowing about this Bram Stoker Award thing, and now having accidentally read multiple authors who have won it, now I'm looking.
You are, but is a teenager going to?
Probably not. You're probably right.
They're picking a cover that looks the most interesting in that format. And the thing behind movie covers is, remember that movie that you and your friends went and saw and you liked it? This is the book. You should buy it.
Yeah. And I agree. I do feel like, yes, I completely agree with you that the average public is going to be less particular about, did it win awards?
Yeah.
But somebody who reads this book and then goes, oh, well, that was interesting, and then is looking for more that maybe kind of come from that.
Yeah.
I wonder if, like, I don't know, changing a cover to match some of the other covers that won that award.
Maybe.
If, like, a whole bunch of them won the Bram Stoker Award, but, like, the one that had the biggest name author had, like, very bright, bold colors on it, maybe all the rest of them would go, hey, I think I want a bright, bold cover for this because I want to match him or her who got who is the big name who won this award. And when people are then looking for other Bram Stoker Award winners, they're like, I want to go get more of these.
Maybe.
I don't know. Maybe I'm reading way into that. But I wonder if the thought process crosses anybody's mind.
Maybe. I think this is a case where the cover change is probably, like you said, motivated by that kind of contrasty cover is going to catch your eye more on a screen than the pink cover is.
Yeah, it's medium. It's the medium of it. But yeah, I mean, that's another thing we should do an episode on. Like, what is it about digital media that makes us have to have a certain look on things? But I don't know.
Part of it is because I think when you're, especially ebooks and stuff, people are either reading them on a phone or an e-reader, and or on I suppose most people I don't think use computers. They use a tablet or they use a phone to consume.
Yeah, I can't imagine anyone reading a book on a laptop.
Maybe. And so you want stuff to be easily consumable and easy to see and easy to read the stuff on it. Usually the other thing you notice when you're looking at stuff like through an ebook reader or whatever is the covers also tend to not have any of the extra stuff on them that you see on the book cover. All the things that say it won this or that award, it's all gone. It's usually just author, title, image. Because they don't want them to get bogged down. You want someone to be scrolling and go, this is the one that I want. It makes it easier.
Unlike certain updated websites.
Who are you trashing, Jen?
I'm nobody that I'm going to mention.
I don't know who you are, but Jen doesn't like your website.
Anyway, that's pretty much all I have to say about the Grace Year, even though I was super excited about it.
We've been talking for an hour. All you have to say.
I don't know. There's no time on my screen. I just get, and we're going to cut a bunch of this anyway. It's still only 45 minutes. It's fine.
Yeah.
But yes, that is all I have to say about the Grace Year. I'm super excited about it. I think that you should read it. I hope that you listened and stopped at the spoiler point and are not spoiled, because this is a book that you do have to experience fully.
Unless you're married, then you just listen to Jen spoil it.
But it was so good. I cried, Mary. It made me cry.
Someday I'll read books again, Jen. Someday. In my defense, I mean, you were also sick, but I was sick all week last week.
Yes. We've been fighting the creeping crud that is not COVID.
Yeah, we did not get the vid. We just got the other stuff.
The vid. It's now the vid. Wasn't it the Rona?
The Rona. Yeah, I prefer the vid. It's a little easier to say.
Okay, anyway, I have many more exciting books that I will share with you briefly. Most of them are kind of dark and disturbing. I've been reading a lot of dark and disturbing. I don't apologize for that.
You did read a nice pink cover for our Valentine's Day episode, though. There you go.
See, it's pink and it's for Valentine's Day. I totally didn't realize.
Question though. This is the most important question. Is there a love triangle?
Yes. Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Yes. Oh my god. But it's a love triangle resolved by death.
It doesn't matter. If it's YA, there's got to be a love triangle. That's all there is to it.
Oh my gosh.
All YA has love triangles. You cannot avoid it. It all of it. Every single YA ever has a love triangle in it.
Can I say that there might be two technically?
Sure.
Maybe 3?
There can be more than one.
Yeah, because main girl kind of gets around a little.
Hunger Games has a love triangle. Actually, I don't know if the Divergent books do. All the books I've read so far have. The Wolf by Wolf had a love triangle. What was the other one? Romanoff. Romanoff have a love triangle? I don't know if it did. Maybe it didn't.
Now you have me deeply thinking about all the relationships that were happening in that book.
The other one I read with the really long, obnoxious title that had a love triangle. The really good book with the title I can't remember for the life of me.
Oh, the long, complicated title.
Yeah.
Yes.
That one. Love triangle.
Yes.
They all have love triangles. Every single one. It's a YA. It's a YA trope. All YAs have love triangles. It's just they can't help themselves.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't read enough YA. This is probably why.
You should read more YA. YA is actually YA, like I said, it's all very emotionally motivated, but there's also a lot of weird stuff in YA because they just have more freedom to do weird stuff in YA because they're not as restricted by genre. As long as you have a love triangle, you can do whatever you want.
Challenge accepted.
Jen's gonna write a YA now.
I'm gonna do a YA. I really thought that my gothic novel was gonna be YA because of the age of the characters. And then I was told that my vocabulary was a little too high-handed in it. Yay! We did the Grace year finally.
We finally did it. Anything else to say, Jen, about anything?
No, I'm going to go crawl back into my hole and write songs for the month of February out of old angsty poems.
Jen's writing music now. She's moved on from book. She's going to write an album. And then after that, you're going to write your YA.
It's in my future, I'm sure. One of my trunk novels is got to be a YA somewhere. Oh, okay. So that's all I have. The Grace year.
We finally got there. And then also hit like 20 tangents. See, we're tangenting and we know it's the end of an episode.
Yes, when we tangent, it's the end.
All right. Well, until next time when we talk about God knows what, something else in Jen's backlog.
Yes.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for cracking another case with Mary and Jen. To learn more about Casing the Cover, follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Casing the Cover. To contact us or suggest a book, email casingthecоverpod@gmail.com. New episodes of Casing the Cover released the second and fourth Tuesday on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher.